This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. With the moderating centrist voice of Sandra Day O'Connor gone from the Supreme Court, a conservative counter-revolution that had been stymied for 20 years has now begun. So says Jeffrey Toobin in his new book, The Nine, Inside the Secret World of the Supreme Court. His book is about how this counter-revolution developed. It's also a behind-the-scenes look at the court, its recent decisions, and the personalities of the justices behind them. The Nine is based on interviews with justices and their law clerks that were given on a not-for-attribution basis. Toobin is senior legal analyst for CNN and a staff writer for The New Yorker. One chapter of his new book revisits the decision Bush v. Gore, which he wrote about in a best-selling book. In that decision, the Supreme Court stopped the Florida recount in the contested 2000 presidential election and allowed the Florida certification of Bush's victory to stand. This put Bush over the top in electoral votes, making him president. In Toobin's new book, he comes up with some new, revealing stories about that decision. Isn't this the decision that Supreme Court justices are most uncomfortable talking about?
I think they all know that in the second paragraph of their obituaries will be how they voted in Bush v. Gore. That defined them. And what particularly bothered them about the case is that it was so nakedly political. The justices have a conception of themselves that is separate from politics. I mean, they are realistic, they are practical people, but they also try to portray themselves, even to themselves, as apart from politics. And this was so political and so sort of grotesquely partisan that that's what really makes them uncomfortable about it.
Now, you write a lot about Sandra Day O'Connor throughout your book. She figures, of course, prominently in the Bush v. Gore chapter. You say that she had her mind made up about Bush v. Gore. She thought George W. Bush should win the case as well as the election. Why?
Well, Sandra O'Connor is a Republican, and proudly so. She was the majority leader of the Arizona Senate. She identifies with Republicans. She particularly liked the elder President Bush and his wife Barbara. Those were her kind of Republicans. And on election night, she and her husband were unusually open about their hope for President Bush to win the election. Once the case got into the Supreme Court, the complaints of the Democrats were exactly the kind of thing that O'Connor hated. She thought that the case was about voters who had made mistakes.